What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be ranking the top 10 anime original quirks from My Hero Academia. As the title suggests, these abilities are ones that did not originate from the manga like most quirks do, but instead they only appear for the first time in filler episodes, OVAs, and of course the movies as well. Before we get into it, it should be said that the different powers in this video will be ranked from most interesting to least interesting in my opinion, so the position isn't necessarily based on how powerful they might be. Also, any anime original quirks that have already shown up in my previous top 10 videos won't be in this one, but if you want to see those, then my playlist featuring all my top 10s is in the description below. Okay, so starting in first place we have Zombifies, which is an ability that first appeared in the Training of the Dead OVA. In that episode, Class 1A took part in a survival exercise alongside 4 students from another academy, and among them was this Bakugo type character called Fujimi, who ended up clashing with the real Bakugo multiple times. His Zombifies quirk was by far the most interesting out of his classmates, as it enables him to produce a pink gas from his body that zombifies anyone who breathes it in. For a period of time, the people infected become indestructible but lose all brain activity, to the point where they have no control over their quirks and have been shown to move in random ways. The zombies can then pass the virus to other people through biting, meaning it can easily be spread to areas where Fujimi's gas didn't initially reach. Despite apparently having no brain activity, many of the infected instinctively retain parts of their core personality, with Zombie Mineta doing things that only he would do, and the same was true for other characters as well. This brings us to the downsides of the quirk, which is that Fujimi himself seemingly has no control over his creations, as the infected are free to do whatever they want, including biting him. When this happens, he transforms into a zombie like anyone else, and he's also clearly not immune from the effects of his pink gas, hence why his costume has a mask covering his mouth and nose. Show to imply that if Fujimi is in his normal state, then he's able to reverse the effects of the virus in other people. However, this was just an assumption and we don't know for sure. What we do know is that in the OVA, the infected all return back to normal simultaneously when the time ran out, with Froppy and Fujimi being zombies for a shorter period of time than other people. This indicates that once the first zombie goes back to normal, then all the others do as well, regardless of when they were infected. But again, this is speculation based on what we've seen. Overall, I think a power like this would be best in the hands of a villain who wants to cause widespread chaos, but for a hero, I am curious to see how this could be helpful in a normal situation. Next up is Chimera, who is a villain that had a quirk of the same name during the Heroes Rising movie, and one of the things that makes this power great is that it's essentially a hybrid between the 3 main types of quirks, those being mutant, emitter, and transformation types. Mutation quirks are ones where the owner has a permanent physical abnormality, and Chimera satisfies that requirement by having the head of a wolf, the tail of what I assume is a dragon, and his hands and feet resemble the claws of an eagle. By contrast, a transformation quirk is one that enables the user to temporarily change their body in some way, and Chimera meets that requirement too, as he has a Dragon Ball style power up where his muscle mass drastically increases alongside his feathers, his tail, and pretty much everything else about him. Finally, emitter quirks are powers that can be turned on and off and don't usually change the way the user looks, and Chimera being able to breathe fire is a classic example of that type of ability. On top of that, he has superhuman strength even when in his base form, as shown when he broke the ground with a single step, destroyed this vehicle with a shove, and easily held off Class 1A without much problem. If we're being real, his natural raw strength is probably higher than the number 1 hero, as I can't imagine Endeavor doing some of these things without the assistance of his fire. Speaking of fire, when Chimera does his transformation, his flame breath turns into a more concentrated beam of energy that in my opinion only strengthens the Dragon Ball comparison. I genuinely wouldn't be surprised if we had seen this guy in the Tournament of Power, cause, in all honesty, he just looks like a character from that series who was then brought into My Hero Academia. In third place is the quirk known as Eagle, but the most interesting thing about this is not the power itself, but rather the backstory surrounding the character. The bird person in question is called Takahiro, and according to Horikoshi, he was originally meant to be the number 2 hero in Japan. Takahiro is technically an anime original character given that his first appearance in the universe came in the 2 Heroes movie, and to this day he's yet to make an appearance in the actual manga. That being said, in volume 20, Horikoshi explained that this character is from a previous manga he had written called Omagadokizu, and he was 100% going to use this design for the character we now know as Hawks. According to him, the reason this didn't happen is that when they were working on the 2 Heroes movie, one of the anime staff had read Omagadokizu and asked if they could use Takahiro in the film itself. He said that he was incredibly moved that someone loved his previous work and gave his consent for Takahiro to appear, with the knock-on effect being that Hawks now had to be redesigned. While the full details of his Eagle quirk are unknown, it's safe for us to assume that had he not been used in the movie, it would have been the exact same as Hawks' fierce wings. Let me know in the comments if you think Horikoshi made the right decision by changing the design, or do you think he should have stuck with Takahiro, so that Tokiyami could have had a mentor with a bird head like him? Moving on, we have the IQ quirk used by Saeko Intelli, who is a second year student that appeared during the provisional license exam. Intelli is from a hero academy that appears to be a female-only school, and her regular IQ score is 150, which is way ahead of the average in Japan, which is 104. By drinking tea, her quirk allows her to temporarily multiply her IQ, and according to President Mike's description, different brands of tea have different effects on how much smarter she becomes. While this isn't the first intelligence-related quirk we've seen, it is the first one that has a virtually unlimited potential, because in theory, with the right brand of tea, her IQ could keep multiplying to a level never reached before by any human. When she came up against Class A, she devised a plan to make Jiro, Froppy, and Shoji useless, with the intention being that Momo would then be forced to exhaust her quirk until she had nothing left. This particular plan didn't work since Saiko incorrectly thought that Yaoyorozu wouldn't use her creation to attack, so I'm going to assume the brand of tea she drank that day must have just been terrible. On a separate note, the name Saiko is a reference to a similar word that means maximum or highest, and when you combine that with her surname, overall it means something like greatest intelligence. In 5th place is the transformation quirk known as Whole Body Lens that was used by this journalist who appeared in the filler in Season 4. The power enables him to produce an unlimited amount of camera lenses anywhere on his body, which as you would expect are able to take pictures. The images taken are presumably stored in his brain like an SD card, but when he wants to, he can materialize the pictures by printing them out of his chest. As we can see here, the lenses are not all the same as they come in different shapes and sizes, so if he really tried, who knows how big they could actually go. Although this is purely my speculation, I feel like Whole Body Lens is a more limited version of Momo's creation quirk, where he can convert the lipids in his body into camera lenses and pictures but nothing else. That's the way I prefer to think about it, at least, because I guess the alternative is that he has a bunch of camera lenses inside of him, and yeah, that would be pretty gross. Up next is Spotted Seal, which is a quirk used by Selkie, who is one of the few anime original characters to make multiple appearances, and one of the few heroes that works almost exclusively on the water. Similar to Chimera, he has a superhuman level of strength compared to a normal person, but the real reason he's on this list is because of his echolocation. By making a clicking sound with his mouth, the noise then reflects off nearby objects and comes back to him, enabling him to know exactly how far away things are. This was demonstrated in Season 2 when he literally fought against this octopus man while being completely blinded, and again in Season 5, he was able to move freely despite there being a smokescreen blocking his vision. The clicking noises he makes can then be used to send coded messages at a high frequency, bringing us to the 7th anime original quirk on this list. Selkie's main psychic is a hero called Sirius, and her quirk allows her to hear high frequencies that normal people can't detect. That means he can often send her detailed coded instructions that no one else can hear, and what's most impressive is the distances over which they communicate. On one occasion I'd say he was at least a couple hundred meters away from her, but on the boat she could still hear his clicks coming from underneath the water. To me that's incredibly impressive, however the plot twist is that her real ears just look like anyone else's ears, and the things she has on her head are just radio devices. In 8th place we have a quirk from the Heroes Rising movie again, and this time we're talking about Mummification. By manipulating the bandages covering his body, Mummy can convert any inanimate object into a monster that he controls like a puppet master. His creations grow limbs once they've been wrapped up, and even super heavy objects can be converted and then lifted into the air without much effort. The big downside is that they're not that durable and can be destroyed pretty easily, but the villain makes up for this by having strength in numbers, given that there's seemingly no limit to how many he can make at one time. While these red bandages are unable to directly control people, they can control the inanimate objects that people wear, such as clothes and hero support items. This is why Bakugo was able to be restrained by this ability, and he was only able to escape by blowing up one of his gauntlets, showing that mummification can't prevent people from using their own power. Moving on to the penultimate quirk on this list, we have an unnamed one from the training of the Dead OVA that was used by Dadan Tadan. This guy is a student from Isumi High School, same as Fujimi, and because of his quirk he was constantly sweating from the moment he was introduced, so much so that he carries around a handkerchief to wipe it away. To me, his design is very clearly inspired by Tintin, as his dotted eyes and ginger hair make him even more similar to the character than Mirio. While we never got a description of his quirk, it's implied his sweat produces a flashbang effect, and his mech suit produces rockets filled with that sweat that can be used to blind the enemy. It's possible that like Bakugo, his sweat has more applications than just the flashbang, but until we get some new information about this character, there's no confirmation either way. I gotta say, his hero costume is by far one of the biggest and most elaborate ones we've ever seen, like, not just students, but pro heroes as well. So, you know, it just goes to show that other schools besides UA and Shiketsu have a big budget as well. Finally, the last quirk belongs to Electoplant, who's a long-standing hero based in California that's been active for at least 40 years. In 2 Heroes, he was seen working during All Might's time in America, and then in chapter 303, his silhouette made its first official appearance in the manga, confirming that he's yet to retire. From what we've seen, his quirk is a more refined version of Kaminari's, as he can generate electricity and shoot it out of his hand like a lightning bolt, which is obviously more precise than anything Denki is able to do without his support items. If Electoplant does eventually come to Japan, I mean, it would be pretty amazing if Denki was able to intern with him, but then again, the last time I suggested a student interns with a hero, that person ended up dying during the war arc, so maybe Electoplant shouldn't come over to Japan. Anyway guys, if you enjoyed the video, then be sure to hit that sub button if you haven't already, and drop a like as it helps me out. and let me know in the comments which anime original quirks are your personal favourites. Thanks for watching as always, and until the next one, peace out.